Before the Burj Khalifa became, the tallest, most imposing skyscraper in the world.
Right, just towering over Dubai in that perfect symmetry.
Exactly. Before all of that, it was just this messy, incomplete smudge of graphite on a napkin.
Yeah, the literal smudge.
And according to the architectural theory we are diving into today, if that initial smudge had been drawn too perfectly, like if the lines were too straight or the details too resolved, that building might never have achieved the heights it actually did.
Well, the danger of a perfect early drawing is that it creates this false sense of certainty.
Oh, sure.
When an idea is fully rendered before it's fully thought out, you are essentially trapping yourself in a polished mistake. Moving from total abstraction to literal physical reality, it requires a medium that can actually handle hesitation.
Today, we are zeroing in on exactly how that massive leap happens. We are exploring the fascinating, inherently messy world of architectural concept sketching and design development, pulling from a really comprehensive stack of sources on the subject.
And it is a fascinating stack of sources.
It really is, because what we are really talking about today is a masterclass in problem solving. This is about how you navigate uncertainty in any project, how you avoid jumping to premature conclusions, and how you take a vague, fuzzy intention and systematically turn it into a concrete, brilliant solution.
Yeah, because the sources lay down this crucial philosophical foundation right out of the gate.
Right.
Architecture rarely begins fully formed.
Right.
I mean, a building doesn't just spontaneously generate in the mind, complete with, flawless proportions and HVAC systems and perfect material choices.
That would be nice, but no.
Right. It usually starts as an itch, a tension. Maybe it's just a fragment of a memory about how morning light should wash over a kitchen counter, or a question about how a community actually interacts in public.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this. Because that means at the very beginning of the design process, the architect doesn't actually possess a building.
No, not at all.
They have absolutely nothing physical to offer.
They possess the possibility of a building. And that is a very, very fragile state to be in.
Wow, fragile.
Between that raw, unformed possibility and a final structure made of steel and glass, there lies this incredible crucible of concept sketching. It is the critical stage where a designer begins to, as the text beautifully puts it, think visibly.
Think visibly. I love that. To get from a fragile possibility to a massive reality, you need a powerful engine. Which brings us to the actual definition of a concept.
Yes, the concept.
I feel like people misuse the word concept all the time across every industry.
Oh, constantly.
Like in marketing or even casual conversation, a concept is treated like a catchy slogan. It's an aesthetic vibe you just attach to a product at the very end to make it sell.
Right, like an afterthought.
Exactly. It's like writing a generic soulless movie and then slapping a sweeping orchestral score over it at the last minute to just, force the audience to feel something.
Yeah, and our source material actively dismantles that misconception. In rigorous architectural thinking, a true concept is never applied after the fact.
Right.
It is the narrative engine. It's a central guiding logic that organizes the entire project. If your concept is just a superficial label, it will instantly disconnect from the physical design the moment you face a real-world problem.
Oh, that makes total sense.
But a robust concept actively generates decisions. It tells you where the windows go, how high the ceiling should be, and what materials you absolutely must use to achieve the goal.
And the sheer diversity of where these conceptual engines come from is just wild.
Oh, absolutely.
Like a concept doesn't have to be some lofty, abstract, philosophical ideal, right? It can be fiercely pragmatic. The text notes it might arise directly from the site conditions.
Right, the physical reality of the site.
Yeah, so if you were building on a jagged 45-degree cliff face, your concept might simply be the structural logic of anchoring into bedrock versus floating above the canopy.
Or it could stem from a programmatic tension.
Okay, like what?
Well, think about a courthouse. The concept might entirely revolve around the strict separation of circulation paths.
Oh, interesting.
You have to ensure that the judge, the jury, and the defendant never accidentally cross paths in a hallway until they are inside the courtroom. That invisible tension dictates the entire physical volume of the building.
Wow. Let's go even deeper into the experiential concepts, though, because the sources mention compression and release.
Yes, a classic.
This is a purely psychological concept, but it dictates physical dimensions. Imagine you are walking into a major museum or a cathedral.
Okay.
The architect forces you to walk through a low, dark, incredibly narrow stone corridor. Your shoulders tense up, you feel constrained, maybe a little claustrophobic. That is the compression.
And that deliberate physical restriction is exactly what makes the release so powerful.
Right.
When you step out of that dark corridor, and the space suddenly explodes into a massive, sun-drenched 70-foot-tall atrium, the feeling of awe isn't an accident.
It's engineered.
Exactly. It is a biological response engineered by the architecture. The concept of compression and release wasn't a marketing slogan. It was a physical manipulation of space to create a specific emotional sequence.
But there is a massive danger here. If a concept like compression and release is just an invaluable idea in your head, or, a fancy phrase you use in a pitch meeting, you can easily trick yourself into thinking it works.
Oh, very easily.
To find out if your heavy stone corridor actually feels oppressive, or if your atrium actually feels awe-inspiring, you have to drag that idea out of your imagination and force it into the physical world. You have to sketch it.
What's fascinating here is that testing an architectural concept requires a medium that actually embraces imperfection.
Really? Imperfection.
Yeah, you cannot test a fragile early hunch with a perfectly drafted, hyper-realistic 3D computer rendering.
Why not? Wouldn't that be better?
The software demands too much specific data. It forces you to choose the exact thickness of a wall or the precise color of the floor tiles before you even know what the overall shape of the room is. It's just too rigid.
And this introduces the most counterintuitive theory in our entire stack of sources today: productive ambiguity.
Yes, the sketch is a formidable tool specifically because it is incomplete.
Okay.
The text points out that a sketch can hold hesitation. A single charcoal line can represent a wall, a pathway, or a line of trees, all at the exact same time.
Wow.
The sketch can hold contradictions and multiple alternatives without completely paralyzing the designer. It's fast, cheap, and abstract enough to let the mind wander.
Wait, I have to push back on this.
Okay, go for it.
Because if you are listening to this and you manage a team or you write software or run a business, ambiguity is usually the enemy.
Sure, in a lot of fields, yeah.
Right. In software development, if you leave the product specs ambiguous, the project fails. You need clear, actionable deliverables immediately.
That's the conventional wisdom.
So why on earth would an architect, someone designing a building that literally must defy gravity and shelter human lives, want to wallow in a messy, vague drawing? Doesn't that just waste time?
It is the ultimate paradox of creative problem solving. And it's a trap a lot of ambitious students and professionals fall into across all fields.
The trap of moving too fast.
Exactly. They assume good design means arriving at a clear, polished answer as quickly as possible. But the sources argue that high-level concept design depends entirely on sustaining ambiguity long enough for the truly brilliant possibilities to emerge.
Sustaining the ambiguity, so you're actively fighting the urge to finalize things.
You have to. If you fix a project too early, if you lock in that very first appealing image that pops into your head just to feel a sense of progress, you end up spending the rest of the agonizing design process merely justifying an underdeveloped idea.
Oh, wow.
You become defensive of a flowered form rather than exploring what the form actually needs to be to solve the problem.
It's the classic first draft trap. You fall in love with your initial idea, and instead of critically examining it, you spend weeks building a defense for its flaws simply because it looks pretty on paper.
Ambiguity prevents that superficial commitment. It keeps the cognitive doors open. The text features a really powerful maxim. Failure at the sketch stage is often what prevents failure at the building stage.
Oh, I like that.
You have to cultivate a willingness to draw things that are ugly, things that might collapse, things that fail.
Finding out an idea structurally fails when it is just graphite on a piece of tracing paper costs you like 10 cents in 3 minutes.
Exactly.
Finding out it fails when it is 3 stories of poured concrete costs millions of dollars and potentially human lives.
Early design is a field of trial, not a field of proof. You aren't proving you are right yet. You are hunting for where you were wrong.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If sketching is this highly adaptable tool for finding out where we are wrong, there have to be different variations of this tool depending on the specific problem we are trying to solve.
Right, different tools for different jobs.
You wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a screw. And the sources provide a breakdown of the visual thinking toolkit, starting with a critical distinction between a diagram and a sketch.
They do both involve making marks on paper, obviously, but they perform vastly different cognitive work. A diagram strips away reality to focus purely on relationships.
A diagram is like the London Underground map.
Perfect example.
If you look at the tube map, it does not tell you what the streets above actually look like. It doesn't accurately represent the geographical distance between stations or whether there is a coffee shop on the corner.
It ignores all that messy reality.
Yeah, it only communicates the purely abstract functional logic of how to get from point A to point B. It's pure relationship.
While the sketch is the moment you step out of the subway station and confront the physical city.
Right.
The sketch moves past abstract logic and tests whether that diagram can actually generate a meaningful three-dimensional physical environment. It brings in light, shadow, texture, and scale.
And our sources detail 5 specific types of concept sketches that architects use to navigate this physical environment.
Yeah, the 5 types.
Instead of just listing them out, let's pretend you and I have been hired to design a massive public library on a steeply sloping hill. Where do we even begin?
Well, we don't start by drawing the hinges on the front door.
Right, definitely not.
We start from a great distance, which brings us to the first tool, massing sketches.
Okay, massing sketch.
With a massing sketch, we are looking at the macro level physical presence. We are asking fundamental volumetric questions. Is this library one giant monolithic block sitting heavy on the hill? Or is it broken up into a series of smaller cascading volumes that step down the slope?
Got it.
We're evaluating how solid form interacts with empty space, completely ignoring the interior for a moment.
Okay, so let's say our massing sketch looks amazing from the outside. We have this beautiful solid block terracing down the hill, but a building isn't a sculpture. People have to go inside.
They do.
How do we know the center of our massive block isn't a dark claustrophobic cave? That specific problem forces us to change our tool and take a vertical slice through the building, leading us to sectional sketches.
The section is vital for understanding the vertical spatial experience. By slicing the building open, like you're cutting a cross-section of an apple, we can trace exactly how natural light penetrates the interior.
Right, tracking the light.
We can see if the reading room on the second floor visually connects to the lobby on the first floor. If our concept is about enlightenment, the sectional sketch is where we prove that light can actually reach the deepest parts of the library.
Now we have light. But a patron still needs to navigate the building. How do they get from the return desk to the fiction section without getting completely lost?
That's the next challenge.
This requires shifting our vantage point to look straight down from above, using plan sketches. This is the horizontal logic. We are zoning the building, arranging the sequence of rooms, and really choreographing the flow of human movement.
And once the functional flow is resolved in plan, we must consider the human eye. This leads to perspective sketches.
Oh, the flashy one.
Yeah, this is what clients usually want to see. The experiential effect from a specific eye-level point of view. What does it actually feel like to stand in the center of the reading room looking out over the valley?
Right, the actual vibe.
The perspective sketch tests the atmosphere, the scale of the space relative to a human body, and the emotional impact of the enclosure.
So we have our massing, our section for light, our plan for movement, and our perspective for feeling. But there is a final critical hurdle, the detail concept sketch.
Yes.
And I know we said earlier that we don't want to get bogged down in technicalities like where the electrical outlets go during the concept phase. So why are we drawing details?
Well, we aren't drawing construction blueprints. We are confronting gravity to protect the concept.
Protect the concept, okay.
Let's say our core concept for this library is a heavy stone base representing stored knowledge, with a featherlight, floating glass roof representing open imagination.
That sounds super poetic.
It does, but physically, a roof cannot float.
Gravity always wins.
Gravity always wins. So the detail concept sketch asks, how does that heavy stone wall actually meet the glass roof.
Ah, the connection point.
If the connection requires massive, ugly steel brackets that completely destroy the illusion of lightness, then the concept is physically impossible. You sketch the joint roughly right at the beginning to ensure the DNA of your concept can survive the realities of physics.
Wow.
If you don't test that detail early, your grand concept becomes an empty, unbuildable fantasy.
The detail sketch forces you to confront reality before you pour concrete. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you don't just move through these 5 sketch types in a straight line and then call it a day.
No, not at all.
The sources emphasize that this is a relentless dynamic cycle.
It is the crucible of iteration. You might sketch a form in perspective, realize it feels too imposing, abstract it into a plan diagram to see if you can shrink the footprint.
And then realize the flow is now ruined.
Exactly. So you go back to a sectional sketch to figure out why. You are constantly shifting between different modes of visual thinking.
And iteration, in this context, is not just drawing the exact same building 50 times until your line work looks pretty. I think this is a profound takeaway for anyone listening who solves problems for a living.
Oh, for sure.
Iteration here is a form of rigorous design research. It is basically the scientific method applied to creativity.
Every single sketch is a test of a specific hypothesis. What if we lift the library off the ground to let the landscape flow underneath?
Sketch it.
What if the roof folds aggressively to catch the morning sun?
Sketch it.
What if we flip the circulation so people enter from the highest point of the hill instead of the bottom? Sketch it. The sequence of drawings becomes a visible record of your thought process.
Which raises an incredibly important question. How do we actually know if these hypotheses are succeeding? The text provides a brilliant metric for this. The sketch acts as a mechanism of translation. It forces verbal ideas to become spatial propositions.
It's remarkably easy to use nice-sounding words in a design meeting.
Oh, tell me about it.
A student or a professional might stand up and confidently declare, the concept for my building is a deep connection to nature. And everyone nods. It sounds fantastic.
But it's completely meaningless until it becomes architecture. The sketch exposes the gap between a catchy phrase and spatial reality.
Yes.
If your concept is connection to nature, the sketch demands to know how. It must physically dictate the orientation of the building to the sun, the framing of specific sightlines through the windows, or the blurring of thresholds between interior and exterior spaces.
Or consider a client who says, our corporate headquarters needs a concept centered on community.
Right.
Community is not a vibe you can just order from a catalog. It must translate into shared physical spaces, intersecting hallways that force accidental encounters, and communal gathering areas that are visually accessible from multiple floors.
It has to be real.
If a concept cannot be drawn beyond a mere symbol or a word, our sources warn that the idea is fundamentally underdeveloped.
And because this process is so brutally exploratory, the drawings themselves often look wild. There's a massive amount of graphic freedom at play here. Concept sketches might be diagrammatic, they might be moody collages, they can be chaotic and incredibly rapid.
And they are frequently covered in words.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the text heavily emphasizes annotation. Notes, arrows, crossed out mistakes, question marks scribbled in the margins. A concept sketch is not a finished piece of fine art meant to be framed and hung in a gallery.
It's a tool.
It is a working surface. It is an active conversation you are having with yourself, with your design partners, or with the client.
Part of that conversation also involves looking outward at precedents, right? Looking at history to see how other architects have solved similar problems regarding a steep site, a difficult material, or complex lighting.
The sources issue a very strict warning regarding this, however. Precedent is for insight, not for tracing. You are not copying someone else's building to save time.
You're hunting for the underlying mechanics. If you look at a famous museum, you aren't stealing the shape of its roof. You are identifying the principle of how that specific roof section diffuses harsh southern light into a soft ambient glow. You extract the principle and adapt it to the unique demands of your own concept.
And by analyzing precedents and constantly iterating, something magical eventually begins to happen in the design process.
It starts coming together.
You slowly emerge from the wild, messy exploration of the sketch and move toward the coherence of design development. The chaotic lines start to gel.
The ambiguity finally pays off. You start selecting the most promising directions. You verify that the horizontal plan actually aligns with the vertical section.
Right.
You refine the geometry. You start asking the harder, more specific questions, like, does this physical form respond intelligently to the microclimate of the site? Are there unresolved contradictions between the structure and the atmosphere?
Crucially, the sketching doesn't stop during design development. It merely becomes more focused.
Ah.
The overarching concept and the evolving physical form are in a constant dialogue, refining each other. If you discover that your structural logic forces the building to be uncomfortably tall, you don't just brute force the design to fit the original ideal.
You adapt.
You allow the visual exploration to sharpen and evolve the concept. You remain flexible. Design development is not the abandonment of the initial concept. It is the proving ground, where the concept earns its right to exist.
So what does this all mean? We have journeyed from a vague, fragile hunch, a mere feeling of possibility, to the robust engine of a concept. We've waded through the messy, ambiguous crucible of iterative sketching, utilizing diagrams, massing sections, and details to test our hypotheses all the way to a coherent, buildable design.
It is a journey.
What is the ultimate takeaway for you listening to this deep dive? I think the most powerful lesson from our stack of sources today is that design is not simply the execution of a pre-existing idea.
It absolutely isn't. Design is the discovery of the idea through the physical act of drawing.
Right.
By embracing uncertainty, by deliberately sustaining ambiguity, and by valuing your failed, ugly sketches as necessary data points rather than embarrassing mistakes, you build the bridge between imagination and reality.
Beautifully said.
This process is how you forge vague intentions into rigorous spatial intelligence. Drawing doesn't merely describe a space that already exists in your head. Drawing creates the space.
Drawing creates the space. And I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over today as you go back to your own projects. We have spent this entire time talking about the built environment, about steel, concrete, structural bolts, and floor plans.
Right, physical things.
But think about the underlying cognitive mechanics of everything we just explored. Using productive ambiguity, testing out our failures on a cheap piece of paper before we commit, using rough, messy sketches to translate a vague feeling into a concrete, functioning reality. How might applying this exact same sketching mindset change the way we design the non-physical structures in our lives? Think about your career trajectory, your daily routines, or even your most important relationships. What if, instead of demanding a perfect, fully rendered plan for your life from day one, we allowed ourselves the freedom to sketch, to iterate, to embrace productive ambiguity, and to fail in small, productive ways before we cast our biggest decisions in concrete?
That's a really powerful way to look at it.